Hello and welcome to Janette's TV. I'm your host, Janette Burke. Today I'm welcoming to the show Melissa Skirboll. She's an American producer, actor, and writer who has won many awards for her short films. Most recently, she won for her Vision Film Festival for her play, which is Show and Tell Tango. And we're going to hear from Melissa today about why she produces female-oriented content with strong female leads and strong female storylines. Welcome to Janette's TV, Melissa.
Thank you, Janette. It is a pleasure to be here. I'm very appreciative of you having me.
You're welcome. So let's talk a little bit about your film, Show and Tell Tango, and how it came to be a winner in the Her Vision Film Festival, which is a brand new film festival. And just a few weeks ago, we had the coordinator and creator of that festival on here, Katerina Campagna. So tell us a little bit about this film and tell us how you were able to enter and win Her Vision Film Festival.
So this film actually started as a short play that I wrote for a competition about 5 years ago. It didn't win that competition, but I developed it after that, did it here in New York as a staged reading where I acted in it. And once we had it on its feet, it really started to feel more like it would benefit from filming as opposed to being a theater piece. It just had a more cinematic feel to it. The play itself, when I was writing it, it was very experimental. My first few drafts, there were no names. It was just A and B that were the two characters. I wanted to keep it open for casting. So it could be two men, two women, a male and a female, and either role with slight variations in language could be played either masculine or feminine or neither. It was a very gender fluid type of piece. When I decided to film it, we chose to make Mac. By that point, I had given them names, Max and Alex. Again, something that Max could be a girl or a boy. Alex could be a girl or a boy. They're names that are neutral. Decided that I wanted to act in it, and therefore we made choices based on one of the characters being female. When we had done it as a staged reading, I had a wonderful Black actor, Russell Jordan, playing against me, and I wanted to keep that kind of interracial aspect. I feel that as well as women being underrepresented in the arts, film and theater both, making opportunities across the board for underrepresented communities, whether it's women over 40, people of color, just in general, any way that I can back up my convictions. So there was no reason not to continue casting that way, so we did. It could have been anybody, but we had a wonderful actor, Jason Allen Carvel, who was marvelous in the role, in creating kind of a mysterious character. You look like you.
Aside from the characters being tied into almost what I would call modern day topics, interracial relations, Black Lives Matter, the story itself is a very kind of unique type of story, and yet it's not. It's a story of an affair, which that part's not so unique. That happens all the time, maybe even more so now that we're living in COVID and couples are starting to hate each other and looking for divorce. But what I liked about this particular story is the way you put the spin on it, which is a woman sort of looking back on her life, and then she encounters this stranger and has an affair. And, you know, I'll let you tell the rest, but let's talk about the actual premise of the story.
So it's called Show and Tell Tango. And the tango itself is how we dance around intimacy. And the older we get, I'm a single woman in my whatever ages, and dating.
You don't tell that part.
Right. Dating can be, it's like you want somebody to see you and accept you for who you are, and you're afraid to tear down the walls to let them see you, because then you might be rejected for who you are. And anytime you're getting to know somebody, it's this dance of, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. And that's the show and tell part. Mm-hmm. What we ended up doing to open this up cinematically, and I had a wonderful producer who helped me kind of bring some of these ideas to life, was create this fantasy dance with two younger versions of the middle-aged couple. So in the hotel room, you have a middle-aged couple who are trying to get to know each other unsuccessfully. And it's bookended by this tango out in this lush kind of forest, primeval forest, kind of fairy tale woods, dancing and falling in love. And that is her fantasy of what love could be like, or how she wishes he could see her. And then the reality is that it's like a lunchtime quickie. And
yeah. So in fact, she doesn't feel that she can be vulnerable enough to really, get to know this man and really develop a really meaningful relationship. She
right.
leaves it at a quickie, or he actually walks out, right?
He walks out. But you don't know, I mean, I like open-ended things. I think it's something that tends to thematically show up in my work, is that you can come to a conclusion about what happened, but just as many people will come to a different conclusion. That there's room for interpretation. Does he walk out and is it forever, or does he walk out and he comes back later?
Right. So a possibility could be that what started as, a simple exchange of sexual pleasure actually manifests itself into them getting to know each other and deepening and having a really, good relationship.
One of the moment to me that it really speaks everything about it is at the midpoint of the exchange between them. He says, "I see you. You're a fairy princess. You're this angelic thing, and I see that." And then she pushes him away.
And that's really interesting, because so many women want to be seen that way.
Yeah.
And they want a man to treat them that way, or they want their partner to treat them that way. Let's say if they're not in an LGBT or whatever kind of relationship. And yet the minute that he tells her this, like, she pushes
come up and she gets scared. So I think there is room for that to play out later on, that she's like, okay, wait, you actually saw that, let's try this. Mm-hmm. And for him to also feel the same, to feel that he's being seen. So
it's interesting, all these relationship issues that you've wove into this storyline, and you do it in a metaphor through dance. And I think that's very creative and also very appropriate, because men and women are literally dancing with each other all the time, not just in the way they communicate, but what's a date, and what's a relationship. A big part of that is dancing with your mate,
right?
And there's a certain closeness that comes from that.
Yeah.
It's like an inherent part of any kind of relationship, like wish list stuff. So that's very interesting. Now, can you tell us anything more about this particular play, and why you put it into Her Vision Film Festival, how you won, before we move on to some of your other productions?
Well, I don't know how we won, but I'm grateful that we did. Katrina I met her through a Zoom meeting with filmmakers, and it was something where I was also being interviewed, and we played clips from some of my things, and she asked me if I would submit. And I did, and I guess it was the best short film that was submitted this year. So that was wonderful, a great honor. Um, I think I've talked to her a few times, and hopefully once COVID is over, we'll actually meet in person because we're both New Yorkers. But it was something that seemed to speak to her when she saw the clips, and therefore I was invited to submit.
Okay. Well, actually, Katerina and I go back a ways, about 4 or 5 years. And I actually met her in Toronto when she was here with one of her other films. She had done a film called Daddy's Little Girl, and she'd submitted it into TIFF. And we met in the producer's lounge. I had just come off a red carpet doing media interviews, and she was in there, and I wanted an interview with a female producer, and we just clicked. And that we've stayed in touch ever since. So, and she's done some amazing things. And I think it was very courageous of her to actually start this film festival, especially now, you know, and I hope that it continues to grow, and congratulations, you won this.
Yeah.
But now that's not the only piece that you have produced with sort of female content, oriented content, and female roles, lead roles, and female motifs. You have two other short films. Maybe one is longer. Maybe
They're both short films. It's about 15 minutes. The other's about 10. They're both on the circuit. The first one, which came out last year, My Dinner with Schwartz, is a short film about a 16-year-old girl who dreams of stardom and meets a Harvey Weinstein-like character who is a music producer who promises to make her a star, and she follows her dreams and him into it has a Alice in Wonderland meets Andy Warhol via CBGB's punk rock kind of vibe to it. So she ends up, this is one night in this courtship where she goes out with him. They go to a club where he's a regular. She's hanging with him and models and rock stars and actors and all the cool people. But his ex-girlfriend shows up, and she's a mess because following him down this lifestyle left her kind of not in a good place. So
it sort of sounds like a Jeffrey Epstein, Giselle Maxwell type of story.
Yeah, now we made it. What was in the papers was Weinstein. Now it definitely has more echoes with the Epstein because of the underage aspect to it. I don't think that
and the ex-girlfriend and the whole thing like that. But really, here we have another really important message about women and women's roles in society. And so this particular film, of course, addresses this, I want to be a star thing and how far you're going to go to get there. What are you going to give up to get there? But what fascinated me about this particular film, and again, all your films can be watched on YouTube, and we'll get to that later, how you can see them. And I like that they're, under 15 minutes, because busy gals like me don't have a lot of time to be watching TV and movies and what have you. But what I like is that these are very short films, but they get to a very good message. And so one of the aspects that I found very compelling in The Dinner with Schwartz is that there's a woman who is almost like a role model. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't step up to help this young girl who is about to go down a very dark path. And I guess I would like you to comment on that. Why wouldn't she want to protect her or save her or potentially warn her? Is there another sub-theme here that we're not mentioning that, has something to do with women being competitive with each other, jealous of each other, as opposed to collaborative? Right. Is there some part of that? And is there some part of you that comes into these films?
Okay. There's a lot there. So I'm going to start So My Dinner with Schwartzy, as well as Greetings from Sarajevo, which I'm going to
We're
talk
going to get to next. Yeah.
are things that I collaborated with Penny Jackson, who is a playwright and now a screenwriter, who I've worked with in theater here in New York frequently. We're frequent partners. We co-wrote the My Dinner with Schwartzy screenplay and I directed it based on her short story that was published back in the 1980s. And one of the things that was very important to me in telling this story was not to take a kind of preachy attitude. I wanted to tell the story through the 16-year-old girl's eyes, and how she's looking at this as opportunity and fun and excitement and adventure, just like Alice going through the looking glass or down the rabbit hole isn't thinking about the danger aspects, but like, how cool is this?
And I doubt the girls that were impressed by Epstein and Giselle Maxwell were either, you know, because they're young.
And part of what was going, and we did set it back in the late 70s, early 80s for that reason. This is the time when club kids like Paris and Nikki Hilton were going out to clubs and were on page 6. When Drew Barrymore had to go into rehab at 13. You know, back in those days, I think there was a lot more freedom for teenagers to explore their maturity and to pretend to be older than they were. I think it's
but that was also a business for them, right? Especially for the Hiltons and Nicole Richie.
And so the character you mentioned is played by Jen Plotsky. The character's name is Jane Alberta James, and she is a model who is just past her peak. So she's been a cover girl, Vogue cover girl. She's been on the runways, and now she's probably not getting the covers anymore. She's a little, but when you think back to that, especially at that time when successful models started when they were 13, 14, 15. So for her, watching this 16-year-old walk into this room, it was less about, oh, honey, you shouldn't be here. This is out of your league. It's, if you're going to be here, don't embarrass me. If you're going to be here, this is how we do it. And how that kind of, they talk about in child abuse, grooming. And the grooming doesn't just come from the predator, but all of the people who wink and laugh and make it okay, that normalize it. And the truth was, it was normal for 16-year-old girls to think it was okay to hook up with 40-year-old men if they thought it would get them ahead.
And it's still done today, and not always for, you know, showbiz reasons, but just because younger women find older men more attractive, more powerful, more successful. I mean, you know, there's a lot of reasons. This is not a new thing. It's been going on since the dawn of time.
Right. And, you know, I think that you can't really, if all you're doing is preaching about how evil it is, you can't really deal with the repercussions, because then there's shame. You don't want to shame the supposed victim. You also don't want to turn somebody into a victim who has the power to change it for themselves, I don't think.
But they can't change it for themselves or have the power without the knowledge and the tools. And so this would be my point about, you know, this character had maybe a duty, or she could have stepped in a bit more to empower the younger woman, you know, like who had no tools, no savvy, nothing.
Right. I think that's coming from our point of view, especially in 2020, where the Me Too movement has become so loud, and we're looking at these things with very clear vision. But that still, I think it's important to see the story, not to say, oh, he's the predator, because he is. We get that. He is the predator. But how does the predator work? The predator works because there are all these people around him that are like, oh, it's okay. We know you don't mean, you don't mean that much harm.
Yeah, well, same with Weinstein. How many people turned a blind eye to what he was doing and even facilitated it, knew exactly what was going on?
I mean, and talking about Epstein, the Ghislaine Maxwell was kind of the person, from what I'm understanding, who recruited. And it's
Yeah.
this older woman who's like, it's okay, don't worry about things. You'll be taken care of.
Yeah.
And young girls looking up to this woman as a older sister, mother, aunt,
Yeah. So
mentor.
like a role model figure, right?
And if your
And
role model is telling you to do something wrong,
Mhm. But again, what was her motivation? She was trying to please her boyfriend, Jeffrey Epstein, right? And we don't know all the ins and outs of that relationship. It's, a lot of
yeah.
information hasn't been released yet. I'm sure it's going to come out in due time. So let's just, before we get into your last picture, which also has a strong female motif and leads in it, I wanted to say, what about you? Like, a lot of women try to live their dreams, and it seems like you're living yours. But to have this production company and to be able to produce what you do, I mean, how's it been for you? I know you lived in LA, you came back to New York. Tell us about some of the challenges and even some of the things you have done to keep your dreams alive. I know that, you've had other careers, real estate agent, salesperson for Sears, so obviously
No,
there's,
never Sears, but thank you.
oh, sorry, that's what I read, Sears, but I saw that on Google, so maybe that's not correct, but maybe it's another Melissa's with your last name. But anyway, tell us what you've done to maintain your dreams.
So I think the dreams are always evolving, as is what I do. Currently, I work in real estate. That's how I support myself. That's the day job. But I started when I left college. I was working for an investment firm, and along the line, I worked at a Wall Street company for a couple of years. Um, I have I was a hypnotherapist and life coach for about 10 years. I've tutored the SAT and other standardized tests. I teach acting, and I coach auditions, and just kind of whatever it takes to pay the bills. I had moved out to Los Angeles in 2012, thinking that I would go back to grad school, and ending up taking the hypnotherapy program as a kind of half measure because I didn't want to give up. I started as an actor, and I moved out there. I was still acting mostly. While I was there, I started writing and directing, which, since I've been back in New York, is where most of my energy has gone. Directing seems to be the thing that gives me the most joy and that I am best at. I think I love writing, I love acting, but the water off a duck's back is directing. And it kind of was a happy accident. I never wanted to be a director. While I was in LA, I had an opportunity to direct a play and resisted it, and then decided, oh, what the heck, I'll do it. And as soon as I started doing it, I was like, why did I resist this for so long? This is fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, often what we don't know, right? We're fearful we don't know.
Yeah.
But all these things you did, right? Acting obviously is like, and writing, producing, very core, true passion for you. Whatever else you do to support it, you always come back to it. You haven't given it up. What's the hardest thing about, being an actor or a producer or a writer and going on those auditions?
Well, and that's why I started writing and directing and producing, because as an actor, and for the first 20 years that I was in this business, I was just an actor. And as an actor, you're always waiting for somebody to pick me, please. And the older you get, the less frequently they're going to pick you. There's not a ton of roles for women to begin with. I think I was reading some of the statistics, something like under 30% of speaking roles in film and TV are female. And over 40, you're looking at under 5%. And you start to be competing with people who have been in the business forever. Holly Hunter and Meryl Streep and Michelle Pfeiffer are the people that if you're 45, you're going up against roles with them, not with newcomers. If you want to survive, at some point you realize you have to start creating your own material and taking that to the next level. I started writing before I started directing, and I had started, we're looking at 12, 13 years ago when I was in LA, a lot of stand-up comedians had gotten sitcoms, and I'd love to have a sitcom. I love the half-hour format. I love making people laugh. So I did a stand-up class, and because my thought was, if I can write a 5-minute comedy set, then I can write 10 minutes, and then I can write 30 minutes, and then I can write a one-woman show, and then I can have a sitcom.
That worked for Roseanne over 40.
Yeah. So what happened was I did the stand-up and then ended up writing a full-length play with 9 characters. And I swear to this day that the reason I wrote that play was I was very lonely in LA. I found it an isolating place. And so I wanted something that made 9 other actors had to come and play with me if we were going to put this play up on its feet, as opposed to being by myself going out and doing stand-up. So, and then from there I started writing and directing, and that's how that all kind of evolved.
Okay, so let's talk about the last film that I wanted to mention, which is Greetings from Sarajevo, which actually a couple weeks ago was the 25th anniversary of the whole thing that happened in Bosnia and Sarajevo. What's this story? Tell us a little about this story, and why did you feel it needed to be told?
So again, this was a collaboration with Penny Jackson. She wrote this screenplay. It was a play that she wrote called Directions. And when I read the screenplay, and this is something that happens with things that I really want to do, is as soon as I read it, I see it in my mind. I know what it looks like. It resonates in a way that is beyond how do we tell this story, but it's there, it's fully formed. And I could see it was simple. It was something that I felt we could do on a low budget in a one-day shoot, keep it simple and just have a follow-up very quickly in festivals to Schwartzy. She wrote it. It was inspired by a true story. So there was a general, I'm trying to see if I can remember the name, Radovan Karadzic. He was a Serbian war criminal, and they found him hiding in plain sight in Belgrade. He had been there for years, just living a normal life. And Penny's idea was, what if a war criminal is living in plain sight in New York, and one of his victims runs into him? And so that's what it is.
That did happen, not necessarily from Bosnia or Sarajevo, but in the Holocaust, there were many Nazi war criminals that were living in the US, in South America, whatever, and did come into contact with people that they killed. Yeah. So let's hear a little bit more about the story and what.
So in this story, it's Sophia, the older woman who has been living in New York for 20 years, runs into her tormentor. And we start off the story, Hannah, who's a young Bosnian soldier assassin, possibly her niece, arrives and is here to carry out the assassination. And whether or not revenge is a dish best served cold is kind of at the heart of it. My belief, kind of coming from that life coaching, new age, spiritual point of view, is that revenge doesn't really give us any peace, that in order to find redemption, we have to find forgiveness. And so I think the thing that really spoke to me most about this script is that at the end, the way it was originally written, we don't know if she does it or not. She opens the door and blackout. We have a little bit of a postscript added to that in the screenplay, but we don't see the gun go off. We don't see hear the bang. We don't know what she did. And whether or not, because when the door opens, this monster that she grew up, this guy who was just the epitome of evil, is a blind old man. And we see her hesitate when she sees this. So and we see her walking away, into New York, and whether or not she is walking away from her past and all of those chains that are binding her into the vengeance and the need to hold on to all of that pain.
So it's interesting because this is the second film where, you're basically saying interpretation up to you, up to the audience, right? So I guess you like that loose end type of an ending, which it's fine. It's up to the person's imagination. It could open up a lot of debates. It could open a sequel. It's a good way probably to end. Now, I wanted to ask you, what, motivates you to pick a certain topic or a certain story and go with it, or produce it? How do you decide, oh, this one is something I want to, move forward with, and this isn't for me as a producer?
I think there's different reasons for different projects. Often it's the collaboration, who I'm working with, and if we are able to find the same vision and the same language. Other times it's, especially for things that I'm developing on my own, it's just something that I find either amusing or fascinating, that I want to dig into, or that is somehow just a story that needs to come out. I'm working on 2 feature-length screenplays, and one is, I'm kind of took a break on it because what's going on right now needs to inform it, and I'm not quite sure how. It was always kind of a post-apocalyptic sci-fi thing. If the extreme right wing wins and abortion laws are stricken and equal rights is taken off the table, and we have that, what is the country look like in the aftermath of that? What is their end game?
Sounds a bit like The Handmaid's Tale.
It is like The Handmaid's Tale. It's based on a nightmare I had 25 years ago that I woke up and wrote down and has been in my head ever since.
Wow. So that's very interesting. When I asked you, do you put a piece of yourself in every film? So this was a dream you had, you actually wrote it down, and now you're considering making it into a feature movie. That's pretty interesting.
And then the other piece is more of a personal, the way I have it set up, although this might be changing because some things have started to come out of the writing that might shift directions, but originally it was going to be 3 generations of women coming into their sexual identity, and how navigating love and dating and sex now in 2020 versus 1980 versus 1960.
That would be interesting.
And how they are so different, and just the rules have changed so much in such a short time.
It sounds like it's going to touch a little bit on some of the feminist movement and how it's evolved as well. So that sounds very good, actually, for women's issues. And I also wanted to ask you, before we close off, So, what would you like to see happen for women in this entertainment industry? Some of the changes that could be made. What would you like to see happen for them that is not happening now?
Well, I think that one of the things that is going to be interesting, because the whole industry is evolving and COVID is making it evolve even faster. And the markets have become so segmented over the past 15, 20 years with the very women's network and Netflix versus like there's a home for everything. Um, but I don't remember when this started, but there was a 50-50 in 2020. It wasn't achieved, but the idea was, I think it was for theater, for Broadway, 50% female-led productions, directors, writers in 2020. Last year in Hollywood, there were 12 of the top 100 box office pictures were directed by women,
Yeah,
which,
I actually got to interview the whole team for the JLo production, Hustlers, which was all women in
yeah,
that writer, director, producer, all women cast. Um, and I also got to interview um, for A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, which starred Tom Hanks, but again had a female producer, lots of females in there, and they actually got nominated. The film Judy won for best. Well, Renee Zellweger won for best actress, and she's over 45.
yeah.
So, I mean, you're saying to me, and I hear you, and you're not the only one who's told me this, that, opportunities are limited in Hollywood for women, and especially women of color, women over 40, what have you. And you want to see that open up. And I agree with you, it should. But then you see like Netflix producing a lot of female oriented content
Right.
with,
And that's, I definitely, when you ask what I want to see, I want to see more. I want to see more opportunities. Look, if 10.5% of all directors in 2019 were women, and that was up almost double from 2018 when 4.5% of all directors were women. Between 2008 and 2020, 5% of the nominees for best director were women. No female directors were nominated last year. Yeah, Renee won for acting. There were pictures that were produced by women were nominated, but Greta Gerwig was the only one that was in the running, and it was considered a huge snub that she was not nominated when Little Women was nominated for Best Picture. How do you get a Best Picture if your director
well,
is?
and that was a fantastic picture, a remake, but a very good one. And also, very stellar female cast.
But one of the things that so if you're not hearing from women of color, women that are gay, women that are bi, women that are over 40 or over 50, you're not hearing those stories. One of the things that I have found very interesting when I share my writing with one of my groups, and especially from the guys in the group, like this story I was talking about, the 3 generations of women. One of the guys is like, you're telling a story that sounds like it should be a cliche, but then you have this completely unique spin that I'm not expecting it to go in the direction it goes. And I'm like, because you never hear these stories from women my age and my demographic. So you're expecting it to be what the men think a women think, as opposed to what women really think.
Exactly. And that's very interesting. And I will throw this into the loop just to round out our conversation. So, I mean, there's not very many soap operas left, but we all know that soap operas were always written for women, right? Because that's who watches them. Of the remaining soaps, like Days of Our Lives, YNR, Young and Restless, Bold and Beautiful, and General Hospital, uh, have they not always had strong like women producers and writers, like Agnes Nixon? Well, she was for One Life to Live and All My Children, but they're no longer, and I don't even know if she's still alive. But like Bell, he had his wife involved, and Bell is YNR and Bold and Beautiful. I think he's passed on, but his wife and his daughter, Laura Lee Bell and the son, continue. Corday, right? Ken Corday's mother and father. The mother, she was very, very instrumental in the storylines for Days of Our Lives. So have you, I guess the question is, has daytime been kinder to women? For women roles or women directors and producers and writers?
I think, I mean, it's hard to say, like, because as you mentioned, it's disappearing, and even the soaps that are left are only online. They're not really on TV anymore here.
No, that's not true. CBS runs Y&R and Bold and Beautiful. NBC is Days of Our Lives, and ABC is General Hospital.
I thought they were only online now.
No, they're not. They're not. They're streamed. You can catch them streamed. You can catch them on YouTube daily, but they are still on those networks every day.
Yeah, I don't know. I know when I started out here in New York as an actor, most of them were filmed in New York, and that was a big opportunity for New York actors to kind of earn their stripes. And it's not something that is really talked about here at all anymore. I don't hear a lot about them, so I don't know. I don't want to speak to something that I don't have any information.
What about theater? Do you see theater embracing women more?
I think, you know, there's always going to be the outlier that proves the rule. It's hard. There's not as much. There are always wonderful women directing. I don't have the statistics for who was, you know, what.
But certainly no woman that's had the accolades of like a Hamilton or something like that.
Right. I mean, I've been very lucky since I've been back in New York. I've been through various groups hooked up with women in theater and women in film groups. I'm a member of NYWIFT, which is New York Women in Film and TV.
I'm here in Toronto, Women in Film and TV, a member.
And there, I think this is something that had I known about or embraced when I was in my 20s, I would have gotten further faster. I didn't understand how women supporting each other and pushing each other and applauding each other was so valuable back then. I have three brothers. I was a tomboy. My friends were boys. But it also, and I think that's, you know, has served me, but it also, it took a long time for me to fall into those female friendships that are so nurturing and valuable. So
yeah, it's true. Sometimes we're too competitive with each other and we should be more collaborative. I'll just share this before we get to how we can find you and where we can watch your films. You know, I wanted from the time I was 3 to be an actress, and I wanted to go to Hollywood and, you know, make it. And my parents really weren't encouraging that. They were afraid that I wouldn't have any income, that I would just be a waiter, or maybe, I don't know what they thought was going to happen to me. So they wanted me to have a profession, you know, first, right? And then maybe acting or something else. But I wound up having a profession on camera, on TV, because I always wanted that, right? But from hearing you speak, maybe they had a point, you know, especially, you know, you telling me what you're going through to maintain. And yeah, like, you know, when you look at all the actors in ACTRA and the 1% that really make it big and make the multi-millions, like, it really is a blessing, you know, that they get that far, because there's so many talented people and, you know, they're not all at that level.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned ACTRA. I don't know what the current statistic is, but SAG-AFTRA, which is the big union here for actors, I think it's either 93 or 97% of the SAG actors actually make less than $5,000 a year from acting.
Wow. So you got to really be committed and passionate to keep going. And I really commend you for that. And congratulations again on your win for Show and Tell Tango in Her Vision Film Festival. Now, as we close out here, please tell us how we can find out more about you and your productions and where we can go to watch them. And I will include all the links in the description so the audience can find you.
Okay, so my website is melissaskirboll.com, and she's going to put the link up, so you'll be able to find that. You can also find me on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram.
And
And sorry,
you have a YouTube channel?
Vimeo channel. Eventually, I'll have a YouTube channel. I just never got around to it, but you can find
Okay,
me on
so all
Vimeo.
those things you sent me, all your social media links, your Vimeo, will all be in the descriptions. And I really encourage my lady friends and my viewers who are going through some of these challenges and want to hear or watch your work to go and see it. And again, everything's going to be in the chat below or the comments below in the description. And all you have to do is click on the links and go ahead and watch.
We've got some festivals coming up, which
Right,
are
I
all
wanted
going
to
to be
mention.
online because nobody's meeting in person right now. You won't have this edited by Sunday, but this Sunday is the next screening at the Revolution Me Film Festival. And then we've got a festival in Canada called Wild Sound Feedback sometime at the end of August. A couple of festivals in September that are already set up. These are all for my dinner with Schwartz. We're still waiting to hear about our premiere for Greetings from Sarajevo.
Okay, I did want to mention that you had been in several film festivals, that you had more screenings coming up. And yeah, you're doing some great stuff, very interesting work. Very happy to have had the opportunity to interview you, Melissa.
Thank
And I
you,
want
Jen.
to thank you for being a guest on my show. And I want to thank all my viewers today for hanging in for this interview. It's a little bit longer than what we normally do.
Cut it
But,
down.
it's been some very good stuff, and I'm glad that you have joined us today. This is Janette Burke, your host, signing off for Janette's TV. Please remember to like, comment, and share all our posts with all the wonderful women and smart men in your life. You will find us everywhere: Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, YouTube, Vimeo, Instagram TV, you name it, we're there. Hashtag Janette's TV. And until next time, continue to be fabulous.